Hey guys, thank you for joining us this afternoon or this morning. If you are dialing in from the US, just looking to see who we've got. So we'll give it a minute or two before we get started. Just looking to see who is here. Good turnout, some familiar names. Yeah, John, very good to see you again. What else we got? Looking, lots of people from the US. If you're from the US, drop a note into the chat and let us know whereabouts you are from. It's always good to know. In fact, if you're from anywhere outside the UK, or if you're from the UK, let me know where you're dialing in from. Because what I'd love to do as we go through this deck today is I'd love you to engage and interact and ask questions. We had some great questions last time. Don't be shy. Let me know where you are. Okay, we'll give it another 60 seconds. Numbers are ramping up. That following last week, we had about an extra 100 subscribers, which was amazing. You're all going in there. It's all going into questions rather than the chat. New York City, Beth. Oklahoma, Chelsea. Outside Philadelphia, Mark. Steve's from Wisconsin. Oh, Josh, how do I see the chat? I will ask Holly, who is supporting me, to see how we see the chat. Christine from Norway. Hi, Christine. Josh from Brighton, sunny Brighton, but it's not sunny today, is it, Josh? I suspect it's as bad in Brighton as it is here in my shed just north of London in dreary Hertfordshire. Okay, right, 30 seconds, then I'm going to get going. Who else? So people from all over, thank you to those who have dropped that into the questions. There is chat somewhere. I don't know how you find it in this interface. But yeah, as we go through, just drop any questions, thoughts, things that you have on your mind, anything random thoughts, just drop those into the questions or in the chat. Oh, melancholy weather. Where is melancholy weather? As always, Josh, yeah, it is, isn't it? Brighton. Except when it's sunny and everybody rushes down there and then you can't move. Right, okay, so let's get going. So without further ado, just want to first of all say thank you so much to this wonderful audience that I have here. I just wish we were all in a room together and then we could interact. That would be so much more fun. But anyway, if you're watching live, thank you for spending 45 minutes of your Friday with me. And if you're watching this on catch up or on YouTube or wherever it ends up, it's great to see you. So today we are going to be continuing from last week. It doesn't matter if you weren't here last week, but if you have, we're going to answer some of those questions like, how the heck do you stop cannibalization from happening in the first place? It was actually the week before last where we looked at cannibalization. What is cannibalization? It's nothing to do with a duplicate content penalty. The cannibalization is really down to Google becoming increasingly sensitive to content of a similar nature, and as we saw in the last session, particularly similar title tags. And there were 3 types of cannibalization, but we only just focused on one. There's actually 4 types. There's international, there's subdomain, there is semantic flux, but we focused on internal conflict or internal cannibalization. And remember, one of the big takeouts of that last session was cannibalization is a keyword thing. It's a keyword thing. And I gave the example, I think, of men's blazers. So you could have 2 pages on your site in conflict for men's blazers. One happens to be men's linen blazers, one happens to be men's cotton blazers. They can conflict for men's blazers, but they probably won't conflict for the linen blazers or the cotton blazers. So remember that. It is a keyword thing. And as we go through this session, and indeed afterwards, if you've got any ideas for future sessions, then just shout out with those. You know, we're talking a lot about voice search and conversational search, and we're going to be using ChatGPT to show you how you can solve some of your problems in a couple of weeks' time. But for today, this is all about preventing cannibalization through contextual optimization. And as you are about to discover, if you haven't heard of contextual optimization, it's nothing like old school optimization. So let's begin by asking, well, what is old school optimization and how is contextual optimization different? And where does preventing cannibalization fit into contextual optimization? So those are the questions we're going to answer today. And as you're going to see, that there are 4 pillars when it comes to contextual optimization. But let's start with the old school approach to SEO and where data used to fit in. So SEO used to be about starting with a topic or an idea, or I've got an idea, I want to get onto page 1 of Google for this, for X, Y, and Z, for men's blazers or best moisturizer or something like that. So what are we going to do? How are we going to get onto page 1? Well, what did we do last year? Maybe if this is an event, well, let's do what we did last year and let's use the content and the ideas that we had then. Let's use what we've got available to craft some amazing content. Maybe we'll add some images and videos and stuff like that. Then, perish the thought, we might actually pass our content to the SEO team and we might ask them to SEO it. And of course, we all know that's not the right thing to do. The SEO team are not there to optimize the content. We then publish it into our ecosystem, and then we ask the question, how is our content performing? Are we on page 1? But that's also wrong. That's also 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. What we want to be doing now is using that SERP data right up front. Before we do anything, get in and begin this process of contextual optimization, looking at your audience through the landscape of the SERP. Because as we know, and I'm sure I've said this 1,000 times, the SERP is a wonderful and dynamic manifestation of audience or searcher intent. That's what it is. You know, it's like reality. It doesn't exist there if there's nobody to look at it. Perhaps that's a bit philosophical, but the SERP would not really exist in its current form without anybody searching. Because as people search and as they interact and as they refine their search criteria, so Google is trying to deliver a SERP that is a reflection of that intent. And that's why when anybody says or asks the question, how do we get onto page 1 for this term? I might actually answer, which page 1 are you talking about? But that's to come later. But if anybody says, how do we get onto page 1 for this, John? I will say, let's begin with the SERP. Don't start creating content. Don't start doing what you did last year. Let's begin with the SERP, because this will help us to get into the mind of our audience, to understand and answer 4 key questions. We need to know exactly what they're searching for, and we need to know the questions that they have on their minds. And all of this, as you'll see, we can get from the SERP. The SERP is a gift, and I wouldn't attempt to optimize any piece of content without getting in to that SERP first, rolling up my sleeves, literally, not just metaphorically, but roll your sleeves up and get into that SERP. And when we do that, when we understand exactly the search terms that we think our audience are going to be using to find the content that we are going to inject into our ecosystem, once we understand those search terms, we can begin to optimize contextually. And contextual optimization is a subject that's so close to my heart. And I think I said to somebody earlier today, I think that was you, Holly, if I was going to go on Mastermind, I don't know if you had that in the US, it's an old show we used to have in the UK. My specialist subject will be contextual optimization, because not only is it incredible, but it's so powerful, and it genuinely will help you get your content onto page 1 of Google. It will drive up traffic. It will drive up revenue. I mentioned there are 4 pillars. 4 pillars. And I equate these pillars to the books and the cookie jar. If you've only got 3 books and the kid stands on 3 books, you can't reach the cookie jar. It's that 4th book that gets the kid to the cookie jar. You take away book 1, you can almost get there. And that's the same with these 4 pillars. The 4 pillars of contextual optimization are, we have to optimize in the context of the SERP. You don't do that, you're going to miss the target. You have to optimize in the context of your competitors. Not just now, but over time. That's critical. You have to optimize in the context of those relevant algorithms. Now, we're really going to get into the detail of 4 shortly. You have to optimize in the context of your ecosystem, because when you do that, you actually prevent cannibalization. And I guarantee if you employ that 4th pillar, you will prevent cannibalization. But if you do not employ pillars 1, 2, and 3, you won't need to worry about cannibalization, because you're not going to be on page 1 anyway. So let's take a journey through 1, 2, and 3 before we get into the prevention of cannibalization. So let's start with the SERP. Now, say for example, somebody says, and again, guys, if you have any questions, just drop them into the question thing or the chat. Don't be shy. And some people, quite a few people, sent me emails asking if they suffered from cannibalization between the last session and this one. If I haven't got round to answering you yet, it just means I've put some data into Pi. And once I've got enough data, I'll be getting back to you, so don't worry. Okay, we begin with the SERP. Now, assuming somebody says, John, how do we get onto page 1 for best moisturizer, or men's shirts, or blazers, or something like that? In order to answer that question, I'm going to begin with the SERP. And the first question I'm going to ask when I look at that SERP is, do we belong? And I have lost count of the number of clients I've had conversations with, and they say, well, we're not on page 1 for this. This, generally, it's a great big trophy term. It could be Louis Vuitton, it could be Balenciaga, it could be something like that. We're not on page 1, or we've dropped off page 1. So we take a look at the SERP, and my answer is, hey, you know what? You actually don't belong there, because the intent of that SERP is not aligned with the intent of your content. Simple example, one could be informational and brand, and your content could be transactional. So you're not going to appear in there, so don't even try. But there are plenty of other incredible SERPs that you could appear in. More on that shortly. So you ask the question, do we belong? Do we belong in this SERP? And are we looking at the right SERP? Are we looking at the right SERP? Because there is more than one SERP. And if any of you came to my Brighton SEO talk 3 weeks ago, seems like 3 months ago now, you will know that I revealed what we refer to as the SERP multiverse. There are multiple SERPs that your audience are finding themselves in that you are not even looking at. So we need to optimize in the context of the right SERP. So that brings me to the first poll. First poll. When you do a search, first thing that appears is Google Autocomplete. So here's the poll. According to Google, how much typing time does autocomplete save every single day? So you've got a few seconds to answer that. Is it 10 years collectively? Is it 50 years? Or is it 200 years? How much typing time does autocomplete save your audience or the world in general? Okay, answers for polls. 21% say 10 years, 41% say 50 years, 38% 200 years. Well, I'll tell you what, This answer blew my socks off, literally out of the shed, down the garden. It's 200 years. It's 200 years. That's incredible. The amount of typing time saved every single day by people using autocomplete is 200 years. So let's face it, everybody is clicking on autocomplete. Well, what does that mean? That means nobody's getting to SERP 0, the SERP that would have been there as a result of your initial search. And every time I get in front of an audience and every time I ask people, do you use autocomplete? They always say yes. Some people use it all the time. If you're walking around and you can't be bothered to finish the query, you'll tap on autocomplete. And why not? Look at some examples. Look at some examples here. Okay. Best moisturizer. Yeah, I actually did search for best moisturizer. And as I'm searching for best moisturizer, do I just want the best moisturizer? Hell no. Hell no. I want the one for dry skin, or I want the one with SPF. Yeah, this complexion doesn't work with the sun. I want the best moisturizer for men or for sensitive skin. Why would I not click on one of those? Why would I not click on one of those? Well, chances are I would. So the SERP, as a result of those, I hope I'm not going to blow my next poll. I just need to check what my polls are. According, how many do, okay, no. A question, and this could have been a poll, but we did some research at Pi and we looked at how different those SERPs are from autocomplete, not for one term, but for multiple terms. And you know, on average, those SERPs are 95% different to SERP 0 that would have resulted from best moisturizer and other terms. 95% different. So if you're just looking at SERP 0 and your audience is one of those people saving the 200 years of typing every single day, and you're not on that SERP as well, then you're not going to get the click, you're not going to get the traffic, and you're not going to get the revenue. Now, just imagine that your audience are like one of these nutters that ignores satellite navigation technology. Yeah, I know better than the technology in the sky. I'm gonna stay on this road, even though it says there's traffic ahead. You get into SERP 0, and what's the first thing that you're going to find when you get there? You're going to find dozens of doorways out there, dozens of other things that you can click on. And there's this myth going around in the SEO world that there is a zero-click SERP. It's not zero-click. That myth was, well, Google tried to dismiss it, but all the SEOs were saying, oh, we hate the zero-click SERP. People are clicking, but they're not clicking on the blue links. They're clicking on things like this. They're clicking on refine my search and all sorts of other things. And they're leaving SERP 0 to go to other SERPs that are on average 90% different based on the research that we did. So we're all trying to pin our hopes on this single SERP when our audience could be in pre-SERP 0 or one of those multiple post-SERP 0s. So this leads me to my next poll. On average, how many doorways are there out of SERP 0? So for example, refine my search, that could be 6 doorways. People also ask, that could be 4 doorways. On average, how many doorways are there? Things that you can click on that will take you to a different SERP that we know is 90% different to SERP 0. And the results are in. Oh my goodness, yeah, you guys are good. 13% said 8 results. 43%, 16, tied with 21 as the answer with 43%. The answer is 21 doorways on average. Sometimes there are more, sometimes there are less. But I think it was about 6 weeks ago that the number of doorways out of SERP 0 increased quite dramatically to SERPs that we may not even be looking at. So when we optimize in the context of a SERP, you can start with SERP 0, but pay attention to those other SERPs. And if you're tracking visibility, you really want to be tracking also for autocomplete and some of those refinements, and ask the question, are we even in there? And what about my competition? Are they in there and I'm not? Then I should be worried about that. And to continue with why we need to optimize in the context of the SERP and why we start in the SERP, okay, is because the SERP can give us so many wonderful answers. So just by looking at the sort of features that appear in the SERP, the answers that we can get are to things like, well, what's our audience looking for? Well, how do you know what the audience is looking for? Well, look at autocomplete and refine my search, because that's what the audience is actually looking for. They're not looking for the trophy term, because the chances are that doesn't align with their intent, as well as the intent of your audience. So why obsess with that? What questions are they asking? People also ask. Not the actual questions they're asking, but these are the questions Google believes your audience has on their minds. What are they thinking about? Well, people are generally thinking about what they're reading about, because everyone believes what they read online. So if you're looking at long form content, that's what they're thinking about, and that's what they believe to be the truth. So again, the SERP optimizing in the context of the SERP will give us all of those answers and help us to get much more close to an intent-led content strategy. And think about the features as well. When we're optimizing in the context of the SERP, if I see a rich SERP with answer cards, my goodness, I want those answer cards. If I see images, yes, a big image blog, I need to be in there. If I see other features, video, why not have that as well? Do you know you can actually own up to 5 individual pieces of real estate in the SERP at any one time? And with that in mind, why do we get so obsessed with classic links? Why? When we can open up so many doorways. So many doorways, but can we open them all in parallel? Okay, here's another poll. Can you have an answer card and a classic link together on page 1 of Google? Because there are certain people in the SEO community who say yes, and there are certain people who say no. But I know the truth. I know the truth, and I'm sure most of you know the truth as well. Can you have an answer card and a classic link together on page 1 of Google? Because we know that by and large, your answer card will vanish. Oh my goodness, you guys are the best. You guys are the best. I think I should promote you all to top of the class and issue certificates, but not just yet, and give away prizes. 83% said yes, of course you can have an answer card and a classic link, despite some of the biggest names in SEO saying it's not possible. It's totally possible. Just look at Healthline. Okay, 9% no, 9% no idea. Well done, you guys. I'm very impressed. Maybe I gave that away last week. No. You guys know your stuff, because answer cards, and here's an example, how to fix dry skin. I searched for this one recently, and this is bearing in mind that this is the UK SERP, you know, and if I did this search on my phone and I use voice search, if I'm at home and I might say, hey Siri, how do you fix dry skin? Oh my God, my iPad's going to start talking. And that will come back and say, well, according to the American...
I found this on the web.
Oh, stop it.
Fix dry skin, oh my God.
Stop it. According to the American Academy of Dermatology, and this is the answer. Answer cards are just an incredible way of you getting in the living room or the kitchen with your audience as they start to shift towards and adopt conversational or voice search, for you to get in the audience in the absence of any competitors. That's the power of the answer card. And of course, you can have a classic link there as well. It's not the same page, because my phone just fell off the desk. It's not a classic, it's not the same page as the original one, because that does become invisible, but it's an alternative complementary page that you link to from that first one to let Google know about the relationship between these two pieces of content. So Those are the reasons why we need to optimize in the context of our ecosystem. It'll help us understand what the opportunities are, whether we belong, which SERP we should actually be looking at, and how we can shape our content strategy, and how we can open multiple doorways. We then need to understand a little bit more about our competitors, because as you know, we can easily analyze who our competitors are today, who's on page 1 of Google right now. And I think this was for, it's kind of a makeup type thing, got a makeup theme going on today, kind of a makeup type group of terms. And we've got Amazon in top position, we've got Boots in the second position, Birdie, you gotta love what Birdie do, built with SEO in from the ground up. Phenomenal performance, Superdrug, YouTube, etc. Now, yeah, you can look at the competitors today, and you have to look at the competitors today, but you also have to look at the competition for that same group of terms back in time. Go back 12 months, because I'm not just interested in who's on page 1 today, I'm interested in who's on page 1, how long they've been there, where they've come from, and what they've done to get there. So if I compare this chart with one from 12 months ago, I can see who's on the way up. And not only that, I can overlay algorithmic date points in there. And I can start to see which of these competitors are sending the most positive signals to Google from an algorithmic perspective. So don't just look at the competition today. Optimize in the context of those who have been improving for the search terms that you are interested in. So I mentioned algorithms. The algorithms that we would layer on top of competitor analysis going back 12 months. And if we do that, for example, with a visibility index, we can see when people go up and when people go down, which means that we can start to understand who's been impacted positively or negatively by Google's core update, by the helpful content update, by the reviews update. You know, who's got their core web vitals dialed? Because I'll tell you what, you know, we made a fuss about core web vitals a few years back. Then everybody stopped thinking. But I can tell you categorically that if you're struggling to get from position 3 to position 1 and all other things are equal, then you need to turn the dial up on your core web vital scores. You need to compare your performance with your competitors, because a drop in core web vital performance will see you drop from position 1 to 3 or to position 4. That all plays out above the fold on page 1. The core updates. Which of your competitors are sending the strongest double eat signals? And don't forget, so many elements from those from double eat and from Google's content guidelines are pouring down into helpful content and into the reviews updates as well. So we no longer have to wait 116 days or 3 months or whatever it is. Those two algorithms of helpful content and reviews are in play constantly. Okay, let me just check my messages. Cool. Okay. Any questions? Is there any questions? Drop them into the chat, because we are now moving from pillars 1, 2, and 3. So we've got the 3 books. We've got the foundations, re-eat. Okay, we've got 3 questions. Is domain authority still a metric? Yeah, Josh. Domain authority is still a metric, and it was Gary Eish from Google, I think it was 18 months ago, still said PageRank. PageRank is still super important at page level. So yeah, domain authority is important. But don't forget, a domain can be authoritative, but it's what you do with that authority that counts, as that does go down to page level. Read double eat. I'll wait for you to finish that one, Josh. Okay, so we got 3 books. We can almost reach the cookie jar, but we need to prevent cannibalization from happening. and before it happens, because once it happens, you're going to start losing visibility across the board. So this is, as I said, step 4, pillar 4. Let's remind ourselves how brutal cannibalization can be. Okay, here we go. Here's a great example, and this is, who is this? This is Superdrug. Don't know if anybody from Superdrug is out there. If you are, hello. We can fix this. Or better still, you can prevent it by following what's going to come up in the next 10 minutes. So that was Eyebrow Wax Pencil. Superdrug was on page 1. We've got 3 competing pages here, because we haven't made it clear to Google which one we want to return for Eyebrow Wax Pencil. Not sure what that is. Sounds like an interesting thing. Okay, they've actually gone from page 1 down to page 3 and occasionally page 4, simply because there are 3 pages in conflict. Here are 2 of the pages. This one is very interesting. Here are 2 of those conflicting pages, and I've taken the main part of the URL and put those there next to each other. And if you've got sharp eyes, while I pick up my phone, make sure I haven't broken this in half. No, still alive. If you've got sharp eyes, you will notice those URLs are the same. So how can you have 2 pages with the same URL? And no, it's not image and classic content, because that will be the same. One's got capitals. Look, capital M for makeup, capital E for eye makeup versus lowercase. These are seen as different. And that's just such a beautiful example. I was so happy when I found this. Such a great example of how 2 pieces of identical content, but one with capitalization in just part of the URL, can conflict with the non-caps version. And then there was a 3rd piece of content that just had a very similar title. Okay, so I thought that was good. Here's another example of cannibalization that we could have prevented. All of this could have been prevented. Anybody looking for a vegan eyeshadow stick? Well, if you are, you won't be finding it from Superdrug, because they're no longer on page 1. I do apologize, Superdrug, if any of you are out there. No longer on page 1. Drop down to about page 7. And that's the thing about cannibalization. That's the thing about cannibalization. When you drop, you don't just drop a position or 2, but you can drop 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 pages. I've seen cannibalization play out down to position 300. That's when we first discovered it, and we called the gravity effect. This was about 15, 16, 17 years ago. Okay, so that's what we are trying to prevent. So we prevent that by turning to that 4th pillar, to our existing content ecosystem. And we look at that. So before you inject any new piece of content into your ecosystem, doesn't matter what it is, look at your ecosystem. You need to understand it. It will help you prevent cannibalization. And I guarantee, you look at your ecosystem first, it will help you improve visibility and traffic. So let's see how we do this. Let's see how it's done. It's a blindingly, obviously straightforward process that nobody follows. I guarantee nobody follows all of this. Might follow a part of it, but nobody does the whole thing. If anybody does, do let me know. And again, if anybody thinks they don't suffer from conflict, just drop it in there, drop your URL, and we can take a look, or you could email me separately. So before you inject content into your ecosystem, doesn't matter what it is. Could be a new product, PLP, PDP, long form copy page, doesn't matter. First thing you do is stop and ask the question. Ask the question, what content do we have in our ecosystem that is potentially conflicting? And what content do we have on our ecosystem that is complementary? And we can categorize, very quickly categorize our ecosystem in the way that you can see here. So let's assume that we are talking about the vegan eyeshadow. There will be plenty of pages in Superdrug's world, or whoever this site is, where they are not talking about eyeshadow. Could be talking about nail varnish or lip gloss. We call those neutral pages, potentially neutral. Complementary pages, those are pages that talk about eyeshadow, for example, or talk about vegan products. They're complements, and they're great. We need those. And then there are potential conflicts. And if we do not identify those conflicts, if we don't identify those first and come to a decision, then we are going to end up in a situation of more conflict. And we won't get to the top of page one, I guarantee it. Even if we identify the conflicts, but we don't leverage the complements, we are not going to get as high position. So let's start with step one, finding the complements. Very straightforward process. When I do this in practice, I do reverse steps 1 and step 2, but it's easier to explain this way. So that's why we start with finding the complements. So vegan eyeshadow. We use the Google operator, the site operator. So what are we looking at here? We're looking in Google to find sites indexed for the domain that we are interested in, and we are looking for complementary content. So in theory, any page that talks about eyeshadow, sells eyeshadow, has eyeshadow on it, could be seen to be complementary to our new piece of content about vegan eyeshadow. And that's really important because we need to leverage the authority of those complements. Never inject a new piece of content into your system without thinking, what other pieces of content can I get links from to link to that page using the anchor text that this page is optimized for? And that takes us right back to the very start, where we think about our audience and what search term would they use to find this piece of content. And here we use that search term in the complementary links. So that's what the site operator looks like. Inverted commas, that means you have to have eyeshadow on the page, anywhere on the page. I don't care. We can be more specific. But let's start with that. That will give you many thousands probably. Here we can see 3,040 results from Superdrug. Okay, potential complements. Here's another sort of complement, vegan. So again, we're looking at the site superdrug.com to say, well, what content do you have on the site that uses the term vegan in it somewhere? And those will also become complements. So what we can do is we can build up a bank of complementary content. If you want to go a step further and think, well, which one should I get links from to my new piece of content? You want to go a step further, then you can always check the authority of those individual pages. Are some of them more powerful? Have some of them got links from external sites? Are some of those closer to ground level on our site? Are some of them getting more traffic? Because all of these will help that signal when you link from those complements to your new page. And that's the reason why linking is so important. Don't just inject a piece of content to your site. Think about the hierarchy of links. So that top one, that happens automatically. But think about linking up and linking back down, and also linking horizontally. And it's that third one, those horizontal links throughout the site. That's where you can leverage the power of those complements. And those links are so good as well for your searchers who land in your site. And it's so important that we get better at providing optimized pathways and doorways. So when somebody lands in your optimized content, because it will be deep within your site, they may go on to discover other content that is complementary, relevant, may not even be what they were looking for, but they're going to have a great time. They're going to spend some money and we're all going to be happy. So in terms of the anchor text, don't forget, if this is our vegan eyeshadow page on the left that we are adding in to our content ecosystem, we get those complementary pages. Generally, I find 7 to 10 complementary pages is a good number to start with. Go for the closer to ground level, higher authority, more recent pages that are likely to be getting traffic, 7 to 10 of those, and I guarantee that's going to boost your visibility. But it won't prevent conflict on its own. It will help because those internal links are saying to Google, hey Google, this page over here is about vegan eyeshadow. So we need part 2. We need to identify the potential conflicts. As I say, I normally start with this, but it's just easier to explain this way. So how do you find a potential conflict? And let's think about last session. What's the signal on a page that is most likely to cause conflict? And of course, we can get conflict from injection of authority, we know that. But in the absence of that, the strongest signal on a page is the title, the HTML title. So what we can do is we can adapt our site operator to include title. So we're now saying, hey Google, give me a list of all the pages indexed for superdrug.com with vegan eyeshadow in the title. Why do we put it in inverted commas? Because we want that exact phrase, vegan eyeshadow, not pages that have vegan here and eyeshadow there, or vice versa. And that's a really powerful way of finding those pages that are potential conflicts. So remember the one we did before where we didn't have in title and we just had eyeshadow or vegan? You know, that brings back 3,000 results. We're going to have fewer potential conflicts. And here we got 8. So if Superdrug, and I say if, well, we know they did this because they do have conflict, were to inject a new piece of content without making a decision based on these 8 conflicts, almost certainly going to end up in a state of conflict. And what's the difference between these pages here, these 8? Well, one's about a blue pencil, one's plum, one's dark, the other one's probably orange or green or purple or something like that. So what we've done there is immediately identify potential conflict. So let's see now what we need to do about this. What are our choices? We've probably got about 5 minutes left. So thank you for hanging in there. Any questions at this point, or I'm assuming that we are all going to be black belts in preventing conflict after this? We're all going to be experts in contextual optimization. So remember, we're looking at the 4th pillar here. So imagine we've got this new piece of content, D, which could be about vegan eyeshadow. And we've identified, well, we saw in that real example, there were 8 potential conflicts, but 3 looks better in a diagram here. So we got 3 potential conflicts. So before we go injecting this new piece in, which Superdrug did beautifully and caused conflict, before we do that, we got to decide, hey, which page do I want to be the doorway into my world? Which page do I want to be in the doorway? Because if we don't decide, we leave it to Google, it's just going to send mixed messages. So, number of options. We can merge and potentially 301 one of these, if one of them is slightly out of date, to our new piece of content. So we can 301 maybe B and C and merge the content from A. That might not be relevant, but we have those choices. And you can include dates in the site in Google's operator if you want to find old content to link from as well. I should have mentioned that. You can downgrade the theme of A, B, and C. 1 of them, 2 of them, or 3 of them. By that, I mean you actually change the title. So if each of these have got vegan eyeshadow in the title, the chances are they're going to conflict with each other and with the new piece of content, and they're all going to lose out. So you could downgrade to eyeshadow for vegans if we decide D is going to be the doorway into our world. You can make any number of changes, but before you downgrade the theme of A, B, C, or any of those other pages, you better check that they don't position in their own right for derivative terms. Do that check, and then on page 1, and you want D to be the doorway, then you can go ahead and downgrade that theming. Okay, chances are some of those might position just in the way that we did for those linen and cotton jackets right back at the start. Internal linking. So think about that hierarchy of linking. If we link from A, B, and C up to D with the anchor text vegan eyeshadow, can't remember, mascara, something like that. If we link up from those with that anchor text, that's going to send a signal to Google. That's what this page is about. But in turn, we're going to need to link from D down to those 3 with a different anchor text. So we're going to create some hierarchy of authority here. You could always do that in combination with the downgrading of the theme. No indexing, and if those 3 pages don't position in their own right, then no indexing, of course, is an option. No index follow, so their authority can still be passed around the site. And often what we decide to do is make a hub page. So if we actually don't have a hub page for vegan eyeshadow, then we might decide, well, if A, B, and C are just different colors, as they were in the example that we actually looked at, the real life example, if they're just different colors, then why not make a hub page? Sometimes you might have to rig your CMS a little, but if you make a hub page and have the links down and the links back up, then that's a surefire way of fixing this or preventing it before it happens. So just as we come to the end of this story, this tale about contextual optimization, I just wanted to present you with a wheel or a process, if you like, that we follow with our clients every time we're thinking about injecting new content into our ecosystem. Start with the SERP, ask the question, do we belong? Look at the features, look at the different SERPs, understand there is more than SERP 0. And if we don't belong in there, look at pre-SERP 0 with autocomplete. Look at all the other SERP doorways. Remember, 95% different, 90% different. And if we don't belong in there, chances are your audience won't be in there because they would have clicked out before they got in, or they would have clicked out once they got in. Optimize in the context of more than one SERP. Okay, look at people also ask. Look at that, because those are the questions Google believes your audience has on their minds. So we're still optimizing in the context of the SERP there. And you may find that longer tail SERPs, i.e. off the back of those features and refinements, will have more people also ask, potentially. So leverage those. SERP features own multiple doorways. You all got the answer right. You can have an answer card and a classic link, but you can have up to 5 features on page 1. I've seen 5 plenty of times. Optimize in the context of your competition, but do it over time and overlay those algorithms, that pancake of algorithms, that stack where you got the core update, the broad core, you've got core web vitals, and you've got the review as well. And if you understand those timestamps, you know which competitors over time are improving and benefiting, and we can learn from what they're doing. And then finally, when we optimize in the context of our ecosystem, then we can prevent cannibalization by stopping and saying, show me the content that is potentially conflicting and complementary, work with those 2 groups, and you simply won't have conflict. So before we finish, just some takeaways. Always optimize in those 4 contexts, those 4 pillars, because without any one of those 4, you're never going to reach the cookie jar, which of course is page 1 of Google. Start with the SERP, do I belong? And remember the multiple SERPs. Actively prevent conflict by taking care of those two sets of content within your ecosystem before you start, but also actively monitor the conflict. Because sometimes, despite everything that you do, you could, for example, have conflict from an injection of authority. And I used a great example in the previous session where it was actually one of the main high street banks in the UK, dropped off page 1 for best bank because they had a PDF on the site that only got to page 8 or page 9. That was linked to from lots of universities, saying apparently it was the best bank for students. So that killed them. And there was nothing, it was almost out of their control. Of course, they could have fixed it once they realized it by no indexing that, but they didn't. So finally, just to wrap up, next session, we're going to be looking at optimizing for the SERP multiverse. Talked a little bit about it today. Going to go into a lot more detail next time. And of course, if anybody wants any more details about Pi, if you're not a Pi user and you want some more information, then please reach out and book a demo, and somebody's going to take you on this most amazing journey of exploration and discovery through the search landscape. So for now, thank you so much for spending your Friday afternoon or your Friday morning with me. Feel free to reach out during the week, link up with me on LinkedIn, or just LinkedIn. I think that's the main one. And I will see you all next time. Thank you very much.